They said the brisket was too much for a backyard barbecue guy like me, too complicated, too easy to screw up. And for a long time, they were right. I either burned it, dried it out, or gave up halfway through. But then I decided to stop listening and start learning. This is how I smoke perfect Texas style brisket at home. No fancy pit, no catering background, just grit, patience, and fire. Well, let's get started. Now, I've had my fair share of burning or drying out briskets, more times than I can care to remember. And it always really hurt me deeply because this is an expensive cut of meat. It's a large cut of meat. And I didn't like that I screwed it up every time. But after trial and error, I finally found a process that works for me. And if it worked for me, it could work for you. Because when I first started backyard barbecue like 10 years ago, just one of those guys that flipped some steaks or flipped some burgers onto a grill. And that was probably the extent of my experience and my knowledge. But through the trial and error, I was able to figure out how to smoke a perfectly tender Texas style brisket. Now, why is Texas style brisket better than other styles? It doesn't rely on complicated marinades or barbecue sauces. It's very simple. It's salt, it's pepper, it's smoke, and it lets the meat do the talking for us. You don't have to rely on those marinades. You don't have to rely on those barbecue sauces to pack the brisket full of flavor. Our simple ingredients are going to do it for us. Also, with Texas style brisket, you get an incredible crunchy bark, you get an awesome smoke ring, and you get that awesome smoke flavor from the oak or the hickory wood. And with Texas style brisket, you do it low and slow over indirect heat. So the heat source is going to be over here and the meat is going to be over here. And that's going to be low and slow at 225 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe 250 with some spikes. We're not looking to do this hot and fast, which would be 300 degrees and over. So for our smoker setup, I'm going with a charcoal smoker, but this does work on either a pellet grill or an electric smoker. It really doesn't matter what type of smoker that you have. You can get the same results by following this plan. What we're going to do is we're going to set this smoker to 225 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the sweet spot for low and slow. Now on a charcoal smoker, how I keep the temperature just right is I open up the smokestack just a little bit and then the bottom vent also just a little bit. This is going to keep the temperature low. If I were to open up the vents and open up the smokestack completely, it's going to allow for more airflow, which is going to increase the temperature, which is not what I want. I want to keep it between 225 to 250. And when it comes to Texas style brisket, the type of wood matters. Post oak is going to be the traditional wood that you're going to want to look for when smoking brisket. However, in my area, which is Central Florida, post oak is not available. It's really hard to find. So I always go with hickory. Hickory is a hardwood that gives delicious traditional style smoke. Regardless of the smoker that you use, make sure that you're not opening the smoker too often. You're going to be letting out the heat, which is going to increase the amount of time that you need to smoke this brisket for. And this is going to be a long cook. You're looking at like 12 hours for this cook. So we don't want to make it any longer than it needs to be. And if you're new to backyard barbecue and you need a little help with smoking times and temperatures, I have a free guide for you. It covers everything from meats to veggies and it's perfect for getting started. Just drop a 100 in the comments below and I'll send it your way. All right, now we're going to move on to trimming and seasoning our brisket. And here, again, we're going to be keeping it simple. So the trim is going to be simple and the seasoning is going to be simple. When we go to the trim, we basically just want to square off all the sides. We don't want any loose hanging fat or meat on any part of this brisket. When it comes to the fat cap, we're looking for about 1/4 of an inch evenly spread out throughout the fat cap. You're also going to want to remove any silver skin. When it comes to seasoning, salt and pepper are going to be your go-tos, and you're going to want to use the coarse version of those ingredients. So coarse salt, coarse black pepper. Now, if we were to use table salt, the salt would actually penetrate into the meat way too far, leading to a very salty bite. We don't want that, and we don't want to have an overly peppery bite as well. So we're not using table black pepper. We're using coarse black pepper. And when it comes to the ratio of salt to pepper, I use a 50-50 blend. Make sure that you let that sit for about 30 minutes to about an hour before you put the brisket onto the smoker. Now, when it comes to the smoke, I'm using a charcoal smoker, like I said before, and what I'm going to be using is charcoal briquettes. Charcoal briquettes burn slower and more consistently than lump charcoal or hardwood. Hardwood and lump charcoal, they burn way faster and go through a ton of fuel when cooking a brisket. So Again, I like using charcoal briskets because they burn slower, they're more consistent, and I don't use as much. When it comes time to put the brisket onto the smoker, I'm going to go ahead and put it on that side up. This allows the fat to render and get back into the meat, and you're basically basting the meat while it cooks. Now, at some point, usually right around 165 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to run into the stall, and this is when the internal temperature of the meat just doesn't move an inch, and this can last for hours. And how I get around it is I use the Texas crutch and I wrap my brisket in aluminum foil. I'm going to do this right around 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And how I know that I reached that is I'm using the meter plus temperature probe, which is inserted into the thickest part of the meat right now. And I'm going to get an alert on my phone once I reach that internal temperature. And back to talking about the stall, this is where people actually go wrong. They might even give up and they might even increase the temperature of their smoker. And that's a big no-no. Do not do that. It's going to cook a lot faster than you had intended it to. And the fat is not going to render the way that you want it to. So just leave it at the 225 degrees, push through the salt. If you want, wrap it. Now, when you're checking for doneness, we're going to be looking at 200 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit. And at that point, this thing's going to be done. And we're going to want to rest it. So how we're going to rest it is we're going to take it off of the smoker. We're going to wrap it in a towel. We're going to put it in a cooler and we're going to let it sit for about an hour to 4 hours, I would say at the most. And it's going to go from 200 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit. And we want to bring it all the way back down to about 170 where that stall started. This is going to allow us to slice rather easily. Now, keep in mind, it's going to be a good 12 hours of cooking time. And then if you add in that, 3 to 4 hours worth of resting, it's going to be more like 16 hours. So please have patience here. And when it comes to slicing, what you're going to want to do is do slices in about 1/4 of an inch. And you're going to have to find the grain and slice against it. So what you're going to want to do is look at the flat, look at the point. Notice that they both run in different directions. So separate the flat from the point, slice against the grain on the flat, then on the point, we'll rotate it about 90 degrees. Then you're going to be able to slice against the grain again, and you're going to have nice tender slices from both the flat and the point. And what we're going to do here is we're going to test our results. We're going to notice that we have a nice smoke ring. We have nice bark, that the brisket bends but doesn't break under its own weight, and that it's easy to pull apart. Then you're going to take that bite and you're going to notice how juicy it is. After that, that is really just going to confirm that the step-by-step process that I showed you works. And you're going to notice that this isn't really that hard, that you can do this too and turn out delicious results every time. So now you know how to cook a Texas style brisket in your own backyard. Brisket that has the perfect bark, the perfect smoke ring, and just the right amount of juiciness. But here's the thing, it's not the only way to cook a brisket. Check out this video right here where I cooked the most amazing brisket of my life. Check out this video right here. I'll see you there.